Good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the Illuminate Leadership Talk episode. At NoPaperForms, we have always taken a responsibility to host very high quality webinars through participation by the finest educational institutions of the country. It has helped various other institutions in the past to gain insights from them on how have they been ahead the curve always and in all areas. In tune to the same, we have with us the representatives from the leadership team of two very prestigious universities and also the Institutions of Eminence, and it is my honor to make their introduction. First, we have with us Mr. Arjya Majumdar. He is the Dean Admissions and Outreach for OP Jindal Global University in the state of Haryana. Arjya, other than being a great orator and a very lively person, is also an expert in the area of law and brings with himself very rich and diverse experience of being a professor, a merger and acquisition expert, a marketeer, and currently heading the admissions for the university. Welcome, Arjya.
Thank you, Suraj.
Also, we have with us yet another dynamic personality from yet another very reputed university, Mr. Anil Nair. He is the Director of Admissions, Marketing and Outreach for Shiv Nadar University in the NCR region. Anil brings with himself an experience of more than 23 years in the areas of branding, business expansion, planning, and strategy. Welcome, Anil.
Hi to all. Thanks.
All right, and this is myself on your screens, the Chief Strategy Officer for NoPaperForms, Suraj Sapra, which performs, as the country knows, it is India's leading enrollment automation platform, assisting educational institutions to leverage technology for making their admissions and aligned processes seamless. To everyone in the audiences, thank you so much for joining us today. And over the next 1 hour or so, we are going to touch upon the areas of marketing, technology adoption, communication strategy, and the road ahead for Indian institutions in the new normal, as they say. So please feel free to ask as many questions using the Q&A section just at the bottom of your screens. And I will take up all of them with our speakers during and after the session. So let's begin. And my first question is to the both of you. And we'll request Arjya to respond first. So Arjya, in March this year, when you were already executing your plans for admissions, the nationwide lockdown was called and everything came to a halt. So for both of you now, it was like changing the engines of the plane while it was already flying. So how did you navigate these times? And we'd like to understand from you that what impact did it have on your marketing and communication strategy and overall planning? So did technology play any role?
All right, I'm happy to take a first stab at that. So with JGU, we've always had an outreach first kind of approach, where we would have a physical connect with the students, with the schools from where our students come from, and we'd actively engage with students and parents and school counselors. Now with the lockdown and the pandemic, obviously that was all gone. And the obvious fear was, losing connect with incoming students. But we started early, as you said, and with the help of our faculty members and staff, we sort of organized a large number of webinar counseling sessions. Now, we started by the end of March. And as on date, we've conducted over 750 such sessions over the last few months. So we've actually relied far more on technology this year than any year prior. Of course, in parallel, our social media team was focusing on sharing stories of hope, of resilience during these times, and we're trying to keep students engaged on that front as well. And the focus really was on keeping students engaged, keeping potential students occupied. Again, NPF had a big role in the way we sort of reached out and communicated with incoming students right from the lead stage to till the time that they actually took up admission, and of course partnering with aggregator websites such as Shiksha, College Dunia, University, etc. That obviously helped as well.
Great. So I'll the same question to you as well, and I'll just quickly add up a thing. Were there any fears when you were in the middle of the admission season? All the planning had already happened, and the execution was just to begin, and the pandemic struck. So what was the biggest fear that you had, and how did you navigate all of that during this pandemic time?
I think I second what Prof. Majumdar said already. The outreach part was predominantly done for the 12th aspirants. It's been done in terms, we have gone to the outreach team physically. The biggest challenge specifically for Shiv Nadar University was we predominantly, heavily based on a weightage of admission test, which is SNU test, which carries a 60% weightage for us. And that test used to predominantly happen on a physical center. And as soon as this March pandemic happened, there was a big question mark. Okay. So if you ask me, our biggest challenge was that, how we are going to address this challenge of, physical tests and moving to our scholastic merit list. That was the biggest challenge. And to rightly said, technology plays a very predominantly and pivotal role in this. I think we were the first private university in terms of undergraduate admission to start the remote proctoring test as a technology. And we have done with our partner there, PSMU, and definitely a lot of effort from your side as an NPF in terms of engaging the student. So that was the biggest challenge, as I told you, how we're going to do. So technology plays a very pivotal role, I told. It was based on algorithm, it was based on artificial intelligence and everything. Having said that, but I think that was the first time we were experiencing. So there are a lot of question marks comes, the sanctity of the test, the delivery of a test, the internet bandwidth, the kind of, the devices students are using, a lot of challenges we envisage, but we are able to conduct the test that's we gone through. And I think we came up with the flying colors and all, but yes, there are certain pockets we had issues still, but we are able to manage and navigate there. And definitely, as I said, social media platform worked predominantly well in these sessions. Like JGU, what they mentioned, we have also typically been dependent on the webinars, very focused webinars. But yes, we have not done that extensive because we found out there was a larger time of students going in the attending the webinars. So it happens a student is attending 3, 4, 5 webinars. So at the end, it was coming too much for them. So we have done very focused, very subject related and all, very query handling and all that way, because attention span is also a big issue and all, and we navigated our way through. Thank you.
All right, great. So an extension to this question to you only, Anil, would be, and I would then move on to Professor Arjya. That you mentioned that you've come up, come out with the flying colors, and I also know that both of these universities have done really well as far as management of the admissions is concerned, meeting the quality standards of the applicants and the overall numbers are concerned. Yeah. So what worked really well for you, and what are the learnings for the future? So during this pandemic, what are there some things that you adopted just because of the pandemic, but you are going to continue them for future forever?
Sure. Very great question, Suraj. I think there are a lot of learning for all of us. Okay, I think at every sector, every individual, as every household has a lot of learning. We all have our own challenges at home, offices, all across sectorial. So the biggest challenge, as I told you, was this examination we done. So the one of the learning what we have done, we adapted to the technology-based contact sessions and info sessions, which is more of a webinar, very focused. So for an example, if I have to go and take a session in Kolkata region, okay, so there is a flight, there's a logistic and everything, and still you're not able to meet the whole audience. But on the same time, we were able to handle it sitting at the campus and probably 3, 4 panelists, more faculty members available and attract that. That's one. The second biggest learning what we had is this year, we incorporated the personal interaction. It's called interviews, specifically non-engineering programs. This personal interaction is actually was quite mostly, I'll say quite insightful for us. This helped us to get the best scholastic student, and each faculty member was involved, and I'll truly say handpicking the right candidate, for the right program, because our program is a holistic development, what we look for and all. Lot of time, the marks, the 3-hour test during that time doesn't decide the destiny, and actually the real worth of a student doesn't come out. So this personal interactions and interview really helped us, Suraj, in terms of, and definitely I think going forward, we are going to continue our, web-based interaction and this personal interview, which I'm talking about, definitely for coming times. This is what we're going to do.
Okay, so you mentioned about personal interviews, and that came the transition from some traditional mode of shortlisting you were following. Can you just elaborate that? What was that traditional mode which you moved away from, and then you moved to personal interview, and you want to continue it forever now?
So what happens, in our examination test, we used to have a very generic 2-hour SNU test, which is a scholastic test. if you see, it's predominantly on the basis of SAT, college board SATs, which takes the quant, logic and ability test and all. That's what we used to do. Then there used to be a very specifically subject related test, which we used to do it. Now in this overall, what you call proctor test, we have done the test, but still lot of student has an issues. Please understand, the biggest challenge was that how a student is getting accommodated to a mode of physical test to an online mode, and somebody is proctored in, he's giving the test. That's a learning that side also as a customer, as a candidate. So we have done this interaction part where we have given much more time to a student where he was little relaxed. And probably, for an example, a student wants to join a sociology. So he's joining sociology just because that some of the parents peer level told them, or he's just joining because there is the area of interest. He really know the focus, what kind of career options he can get into. That's all came into this personal interaction, So the personal interaction was not only a criteria to eliminate, but to really actually guide a student and get the best of the student. So that's the transition which I'm talking about. It's really helped us. And one of the program, I'll tell you, which is the second most sought after program in our university, which is Bachelor of Management Studies, where in fact we have gone one step ahead. And during the interview panel and interaction, we invited the industries. So these industries, and this is the very unique what we have done. And we got the applause from industry also. So the industry, partners were involved from the very beginning of handpicking the students, even though it's an undergraduate program, but still they were there. And that's what's fantastic, because the kind of question as a faculty I'm asking and the, the real output which going to the industry, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, I'm sure. So Professor Arjya, what Anil also mentioned, that they did a lot of webinars and they were very focused so that they are able to not just attract students but also retain them in the webinars. We have been associated with OP Jindal since more than 3 years now, and we've been closely monitoring and following the transition. Right? We know that at Jindal also you did a lot of webinars. I think how many webinars in total did the faculty members?
750.
I'm sorry, how many?
750 and counting.
750 webinars and counting. And one is that, everybody in the audience, there are a lot of institutions, participants and a lot of directors and marketing heads would like to understand from you that how did you, ensure that stickiness in those webinars? I'm sure if you've done 750 webinars, this is our 16th, right? So if you have done 750 webinars, and I'm sure, webinar by webinar, you must have been able to get a lot of motivation because of the kind of student response you were getting. How are you really able to, ensure that stickiness? And are you also going to continue this forever?
Well, we will obviously continue with some webinars. It may not be as, it may not be as intense as it has been over the last 6 months. But one of the issues that we did face was that of stickiness. And Anil, I completely agree with him. Grabbing students' attention and then keeping it for X amount of time does become very, very difficult. The idea is to bring forth compelling content, right? And it's no longer about, okay, so this is an idea of democracy. A webinar need not be a class. It need not be a lecture. Ideally, it should be a story, right? And one of the things that we've changed in recent times, and definitely during the pandemic, is, don't just talk about, don't just give out information about yourselves. Tell a story. A story is always going to be a lot more compelling than, a lecture by some faculty member, on their area of expertise. So for example, when we reached out to our faculty members, and we told them that, look, we would like you to be part of these webinars. We'd like you to spearhead them. So all of this has been faculty driven, right? And we actually at the admissions office, we've just been enablers. We've just, set it up for them. But it's really the faculty members who've been told that, look, you need to be able to create content as to why should students listen to you, right? So for example, we've also had stories on, and we've kept the student really at the center of everything that we do. For example, we had one webinar we've had a number of webinars with alumni, where you've got this one student from a rural background who was unable to afford his fee at Jindal, but still pursued a public policy program. We have a few scholarships, at the university, and went on to become a political activist, right? And is now fighting for change due to the skills he picked up at the public policy school. Now that is a compelling story. And if you bring out enough of these compelling stories, you'll ensure stickiness. Yeah. And of course, we hope to continue to have these stories being told, for a long time to come.
Mm-hmm. So both of your universities, I have seen that are not really very bullish about doing marketing, obviously, because you are selective about, what sort of students you want to have for different courses in institutions. However, you have been pretty bullish about doing a lot of outreach programs, right? You visit different selective schools in different areas, and also, Anil was mentioning about the tangibility element, right? Or you also mentioned about it. Do you think that webinars would be able to replace that tangibility that you used to get through the outreach programs, and you'll be able to build that connect?
Anil, you want to take that?
Yeah. So I don't think so anywhere this webinar is going to take away the overall, credibility of tangibility. I'm telling you, it's required. But yes, these unprecedented time, I think a university like us and OP Jindal were quite agile to embrace this change. I rather feel as a personally, this whole pandemic situation, unfortunately, was blessing in disguise for us. Okay, otherwise, my challenge was that the target was huge, exponential numbers, how to reach out, the numbers. But today I could a larger audience, I think I'm saying, which I manage in one of the Zoom talk was around 386, and please understand all these 386 candidate has questions to ask. Okay. So I understand this is a helpful webinars and all technology enablers and all, but definitely a tangibility is required. It's for an example, you have to showcase, we are also into the sciences and engineering program, how the research area differentiate, in a small R&D center, what we have, which is at least at par with top IITs, what we have, it cannot be, explained through webinar, or it has to be experienced and all. That's there and all. So I think going forward, the real mantra for all of us would be, it's an amalgamation, right? Amalgamation of both technology and tangible is required going forward, and meeting students is definitely, I know there is a larger challenge because we are taking care of the admission. The biggest challenge is the 10%. The 90% challenge is the education delivery. You need to ask those professor, when you're taking a Zoom class of 120 or 60 students, you don't see all face, you don't know 40% of the class is probably putting the name and they're going somewhere else. So you understand, so technology has all those issues. So I don't think so it's going to take away the whole overall historical class, but it's become an enabler for us.
So Professor Arjya, I'd like to get some thoughts from you also on this. So if you did webinars, because there was no other option, but if you want to continue doing webinars, and that's my last question on webinars, and we'll move to marketing then. So if you're going to continue doing that, what do you think could be the shortfalls?
Okay, so there are a number of shortfalls of webinars, as Anil has pointed out already. I mean, while we've been forced to move digital, and really we've been forced to move to digital, right? But we've been brought up in an analog world, right? And I think if you run a survey of students, they will prefer to have physical classrooms. As a faculty member, and I teach every semester, and teaching for me really is, not just education delivery, but it's also performance, right? You stand up in front of a stage, in front of, 60 students, and you perform. Now I'm not performing on stage anymore. I'm performing in front of a camera. That shift has happened. Some of us have taken it well, some of us haven't, right? But I think at the end of the day, if you ask any student, any faculty member, they will still want to have an analog connect, especially when it comes to education, right? Because if you look at it from multiple stakeholders, the student is going to devote the next 3 to 4 to 5 years of her or his life to the program. The parent is going to devote X amount of money for the tuition fees for the program, right? And when taking a decision like this, and it's an investment decision, I would like to have somebody across the table. It helps me make up my mind easier, right? So we didn't stop making stone tools because we ran out of stone. We just moved on to something else, but we still have stone cutters, right? So
Yeah.
I don't think I don't think it should be an either or situation. So while we will, when it's possible, we will continue with outreach, with physical outreach. I don't see why we should stop doing webinars at all, or why we should stop, why we should go back to the Stone Age, really, right?
Yeah. Yeah, interesting thoughts. So I think both of you have highlighted the common mindset here about as far as management of input or admissions is concerned, there is need of moving from analog to digital. However, when it comes to the classrooms, to actual delivery of education, it cannot really be all digital, but it has to be digital and analog together. So that brings me to a couple of questions around marketing and advertising and promotions. Because unlike standalone institutions, your universities are multidisciplinary, right? With various schools and courses, and thus they have got different target audience. So when you guys draft an admissions plan, how are your teams structured? What is the time? What is the method? And what is the execution guidelines that you follow? Some secrets you want to share with the rest of the audiences. So Anil, you may contribute to this question, and we'll take inputs from Arya sir also.
Okay, as you rightly said, I believe it's been almost close to a 10-year journey at Shiv Nadar University, and in a true sense, when I'm saying we really, it's like we follow the real genesis and the torchbearer of a multidisciplinary. Okay, a lot of people claim to be there and all, but in a true sense, how it happens is very, very important. Okay, so I like to again go back to what Prof has mentioned. It has to be a story. It has to be a content base. You can't have a very jacketed program, put some courses, and then you say you do multidisciplinary. That's not it. In a true sense, people need to really correlate to their real situation. Like role model doesn't become like that. Okay, they're doing good because they become somewhere they relate themselves. Okay, it's you see 50% of yourself in a role model. He or she was like this, my situation going through, and change it. So multidisciplinary, I'll just give an example. Like we had a student, predominantly a very pressurized student. I'm just taking a geography from South. They pushed typically, if you're doing a PCM, do engineering, go abroad, H1B visa. That's a very beautiful journey, a career path and all. Now, this student was a very bright student, participating in MUN, policy maker and all like that. He choosing specifically SNU for a criteria that he can pursue the aspiration of parents. I'm talking parents, society, and peer level. So he's done a BTech in communication and all, very bright student, followed by minor in, public governing policies and all from our department here and all. You won't believe, in the higher education, he didn't join MTech. So all George Washington University, he got it basically, a MA program in the this government policies and all. So please see the transition. He still reached US, and what I understand, some of the extract of his work has been clawed during the Obama governance. Their policy and all. He made a public governing policy. So please see the transition here, the multidisciplinary. So as you mentioned, is it important? Do we have a right mantra and all? Yes, it's not a right mantra, but definitely what we do, we work in a very clear method of Spock way. Like for an example, I think Prof Majumdar would be clearly knowing, I think they have the same strategy. There's a very specific team who are pushing for law admission. It doesn't mean that they hire lawyers there to do more and all, but yes, very focused approach. Similarly, we have a team members, we focus the school wise, we have a Spocks, and big contribution. I must tell that this year's success story, I give all credit to my team, and very large credit goes to our faculty, which Prof Majumdar can also vouch and all, because they were pretty involved. Webinar base was there and all. So yes, definitely the multidisciplinary can be looked at as, very specifically school-wise, program-wise and all. So we had a Spocks, we have done that and all. We never change admission criteria and policy. This interview really helped, So the interview of sociology would be entirely different with the English, the department. the economics department, when they are interviewing a student, it would be entirely different with a Bachelor of Management Studies students. So definitely this segment-wise approach, multidisciplinary, helped us to pick a right candidate to us. Our SNU SAT was a generic, which I told you to, the 2 hours test, which looks after the overall quality a student should have. Like a science student, can he manage the humanities program? Similarly, a humanities program student, very interested in data analytics, can he do or not? So that also been taken care through the quant and all other quality tests. So that's where we have that focus.
All right. So, Professor Arya, what Anil sir also mentioned that you might also be having different teams specific for different courses. So one is, the extension of the same question that what is the methodology that you follow to draft an admissions plan? What are the timelines like? And also because there are different teams within admissions, and then there are teams of marketing and finance, and then there might be different teams involved. How easy is for admissions director or dean admissions to make them work as one?
Well, let's look at the journey of a student and then see how we can structure an admissions plan around that student, right? Because I'm sure Anil will agree with me that whatever we do as a university, the student has to be at the center of it, because that's the reason we exist, right? So what we have at JGU, we have broken our admissions office, our entire admissions office, into 3 sort of verticals, right? One vertical, which what we call outreach. Now, they are the ones who are physically in touch, or over phone calls and Zoom calls with, students that want a first-hand experience or a first sort of information, right? And then, depending upon their interest and their ability and their sort of proclivity to get into a particular course, they are then handed over to the admissions department, the core admissions counselors, which are now school specific, right? And much like SNU, we also have a faculty, a faculty interaction or an interview. We've had this for years. The reason being that as an admissions director, I can say that, okay, my interaction with a student right at the beginning is going to be for a few months, right? But it's the faculty members who have to deal with these students for the next 3 years. So let the faculty members figure out whether these students are a good fit, right? So the admissions counselors, the second division, they are the ones who sort of guide and counsel our students, take them through the entire process of admissions. Much like SNU, we also have an admission test. The JSAT, which is administered by the same guys who administer the SNU SAT, Pearson View, and of course, filling up of the forms, arranging for the faculty interview, etc. And to top it all off, we have a separate division for advertising and digital strategy. Right now, this is something that we've created in the last couple of years, and they look at an overall sort of communication with the outside world. Now, this helps us sort of bring together a unified communication, or a unified reputation building for the entire university rather than particular schools. Now, of course, we are known for our law school, but the fact that we are starting a psychology school in 2021 is something that people didn't know about until perhaps right now. So in terms of our communication with the outside world, we're fairly unified when it comes to that. And we do that through this advertising and digital strategy sort of unit. But of course, again, this works for JGU. And in no way should it be taken as one size fits all. And every institution comes with its own unique selling points. And I think institutions ought to be sort of looking at what they provide and where they're situated, and then develop an admissions plan accordingly. In terms of time, method, and budget, I'm not going to let you into those secrets, obviously. Those are internal. Back to you, Suraj.
Great. You may take a pass on that.
Yeah.
Both we talked about digital strategy, and also repetitively talk about storytelling. It's about connecting with alumni and all of that. My question is around student being the center force of the admissions. In another year's time, I think we should be around 600 million internet users in the country, and half of the internet population in the country is on mobile these days. So what has been your observation in the shift or latest trends in the way millennials or a target audience is now consuming information? So how do what would you like to suggest the audience that what are the right ways through which the communication should be served? And then we'll talk about what sort of stories and what sort of communication, how it should really be done. We'll take Anil's view on that, and then we'll move to Professor Arjya. Yeah, Anil, can you hear me? You're not audible.
Hi, Suraj, can you hear me? I think
yes. Now you're audible. We lost you for a while.
Yeah,
so
sure.
did you get my question?
Can you repeat it? I just had a internet snag here. Yeah.
Okay. So the question was that all of us has been talking about digital strategies and storytelling as the communication to be drafted and sent to the audiences, target audiences that you have. However, what has been your observation in the latest trends, the way millennials are consuming information?
Right. Okay, so I think we all know that this millennial generation is well informed. Okay, if you ask me, there is a whole lot of content available on the website all across. Okay, so as we are talking about the attention span, that's what I'm talking, which is very, very strategic and important. Okay, it's very important. We need to be basically channelize our whole strategy of communication to this millennium in a very concise effort. So for an example, sending them a big emailers, I'm telling you, it's not working, because these students apply in some 10 university and all of them sending across. It's just, again, I'm talking about this nanosecond span attention, this definition is very clear. You click it, if the headlines, makes you interest to read the whole page, you go, otherwise you don't go. So we have done, I'll tell you, predominantly, I think all university have their social media, they do digital campaign, Google Analytics, Google AdWords, all across do. But I'm sharing, what we have done little different, and we are seeing, the results coming. So nobody thought. So let's say Quora, okay. The students are well aware of the institute. They're making a decision, not even a decision, they are in the process of making a decision. They need a support, okay, to firm their, decision. So they wanted to take an advice from existing students, or probably to the open market peer level. So like a lot of people doesn't look at that, I'm just telling. So we have done a little bigger campaign on those side, Suraj. This second, also we have done a lot of WhatsApp session. Now people say, what is this WhatsApp session coming about? We have done a very smaller sessions till even 25, 20 students and candidates, but very fruitful. And that was very direct questions. Okay, I have done this subject. Can I able to apply still? Can I cope up the curriculum? I don't have maths. So can I do the BMS program? So these things, because I don't want to tell the whole story about the digital marketing here, everybody thinks, but I'm saying, yes, the change is there, the Quora, they are already informed how you making sure that we are helping in their decision making. That's the shift of the marketing should be, rather than not informing. They're aware. You talk about there are portals. We all know that our information is there also. They can take the information from there. And to a lot, Suraj, I don't shy away in mentioning, till the time we onboarded you, Suraj, the CRM really helped us, And as I go back to Prof. Arjya here, the center is student. So you see the whole life cycle or the journey of a student from when he applies, what interaction is happening and all. So through you, actually, we really helped us. We have a counselor assigned. So probably in a day, I can see the majority of question is probably coming while filling. I'm just saying a journey of a student in application form for an X particular, problem. So I know probably I have to tweak my application form, or probably I have to update this in my website, and I have to be more agile or more, concrete and firm on my communication and like that. So that's what we have done the changes. So I think the CRM, the data available to us, the analytics of data and applied back to that marketing mix is very important and crucial these times.
Yeah. So there are a couple of questions from the audiences. I'll probably pick one of them for now, and then it's a request to all of you that you can keep on posting the questions. I'll pick them up during and after the session for sure. So this is a question by Professor Sanitya Jayakumar. I think Professor Sanithya is asking that how different was the engagement or approach on digital platforms since March as they continued to exist earlier as well? What are the metrics and response as compared to a year before? Very important, do you see the adoption of Google, Facebook, Instagram by students as the source of discovering institutions in a much more concerted way than earlier years? So it's a very interesting question. So I think, just if I need to paraphrase this, Professor Sanithya wants to ask that, what was the approach that you took for this particular year is concerned as far as the digital strategy is concerned? Because digital existed the last year also, right? Since so many years. What were the metrics compared to this year? Did it really prove better for yourself? And do you see Google, Facebook, and Instagram becoming the discovery sources by the students?
I'm happy to take a first crack at that. So we've seen an increased traction across all of our own earned and paid media channels. Now, compared to last year, our website traffic increased by about 25 to 30%. Right. Our YouTube followers increased by about 50%. Now, this shows you how much how much our students or potential students or their parents are consuming video content, right? And this is in addition to a substantial increase in most of our social media handles and in terms of, let's say, Instagram, YouTube, as well as blog articles, right? So I think because yes, and the obvious answer is, of course, due to the pandemic, people have nothing else to do but to consume content online, and it seems that most millennial or most of our students are consuming content in terms of video, right? And video seems to be the key going forward. And that too, dependent on particular platforms. Now, it is more likely that a 17 or an 18-year-old will view a video on Instagram or on TikTok rather than Facebook, which is nowadays seen to be an older person's sort of platform. Right? All the uncles and aunties are on Facebook. They're not on Instagram. They're not on TikTok. Back when TikTok wasn't banned, right? And we're seeing this. We're seeing changes in how these platforms behave. We now have Instagram Reels. I am young enough to have an Instagram account. I'm old enough not to know what an Instagram Reel is, though. I'll figure that out as we move ahead. But we're seeing these pointers all over the place that video seems to be the way to go. We're seeing an increase in the number of followers, primarily because we think that people have nowhere else to consume content. Although we would like to think that our content is good enough to be consumed also. But I think moving forward, digital will play a far bigger role than it did in previous years, pandemic or no pandemic. Anil?
I echo Prof. Arya what is mentioning, definitely. I think almost same stats, rather our increase in the video bytes are a little higher, it's more than 55-60%. So the whole journey, I'll tell you what happens, probably if you can go back and see the data. In the month of March, and then pandemic started April and May, you will see the Google search was gone down. It's very different if you see, because if you compare year to year, that's what your question was, Suraj, last year versus this. I'm just talking about the stats. The research was because there was a lot of uncertainty. And that was a peak time last year when people were clear, I have to apply, go and all, because people were not aware, exam is not happening, board exam is deferred, and also the search was entirely different. And that's the time when somebody is not going to do that because they know it's uncertain, it's not going to happen. They had a time to see a very engaging content, what Prof. Arya is saying. So it matters a lot what content is coming up and all. And we have also seen a big traction in our, video-based engagement and all. And even for any post, you can have a post, you see likes, but what is the engagement? So the number of people who are viewing and the number of expansion of time, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 1.5 minutes they're spending, that's also very important parameter to gauge. You may have some, let's say 150 posts on videos, but you need to analysis what is the engagement level. If 1,000 views are there, how much time, if it is a 1 minute video, how much time of the people completing the whole 1 minute video, please understand. That's very important. And that's where we have done the tagging of the video. It's very important. If you don't have the taglines and all subtitles, there is not appropriate for her. I told you the nanosecond especially very important. A very beautiful video, but the tagline somebody is not reading rightly, which makes sense to me. I will not even go and watch that videos. So I think digital will play definitely a very pivotal role, and I'd rather feel it's going to be more important in these times than any time earlier.
Yeah. So what Anil sir also mentioned, right? We witnessed similar sort of trends. We have Professor Sanitya. That's for you. At NoPaperForms, we had been consistently, posting industry reports. We have posted 2 in this session, and that gives a lot of details about what were the trends year over year, month over month. And we also witnessed that there was a 40% dip in April and May on Google. So the search trends were 40% down, compared to last year, and it had a similar sort of an impact on footfall to lead generation.
Correct.
While everybody was assuming that internet would get a blast and everybody would be online, but during those 2 months there was a 40% dip, and it was really very surprising. It was against the assumptions of everybody, even companies were also thinking the same. But Professor Sanatya, you can go to NoPaperForms website and download that report. It's a very detailed report. I think that will be of some help to you. There are more questions. I'll take it afterwards. I have another question to ask to the guest panelists that we have. So we talked about videos, creating them, serving them on different mediums. But when we talk to a lot of universities and a lot of standalone institutions, they feel that there are very limited mediums that they are left with to promote their institutions, right? So if we talk about online or offline, there are handful mediums or handful effective mediums for them to promote themselves and meet the objectives of maybe a lead generation, maybe branding. So Professor Arjya, what would you like to suggest to all of them, that what are the best channels or mediums for universities or institutions to capitalize for promotions? And if you can also let us know that what has been your successful marketing mix during Corona and in journal also.
Well, I'm not going to share a few, the trade secrets, obviously, but I think in terms of platforms, it's important to understand where our students are, right? And and I'm going to say that with a pinch of salt, though, because higher education is a very problematic area if we were to apply standard marketing principles. The problem is that in higher education, the consumer and the customer are different people, and they occupy 2 different spaces, online spaces. Yeah. The consumer is the student who will occupy a space in, let's say, Instagram, on Quora. The customer is the parent who will occupy a completely different space. Therefore, in terms of being present on platforms, the communication that goes out on these platforms ought to be tailor-made for that generation, right? So I think in terms of which platforms to get onto, we've talked about this to death, and I'm assuming everybody here is aware, of your own media in terms of your own website, the earned media in terms of the mentions that you receive across social media platforms, and the paid media that we indulge in terms of our aggregators such as Shiksha and College Dunya. It's important to have separate strategies for each, right? Yeah. We must be seen as a university. We ought to be responsive to issues that are coming up in terms of earned media, right? Now, if a student is posting publicly about a university, that university ought to be able to respond to it in a timely manner. And I think this is one aspect which many universities simply don't engage with, right? And I can tell you myself, I'm happy to, confess that, as JGU, we should be listening a lot more as to where we are getting mentioned and to respond accordingly, right? Now, in terms of the marketing mix as such, we had a number of program-specific ad campaigns as well. So that sort of drilled down into, the regular Google ad network, etc., which seemed to have worked well for us in this year.
Great thoughts. So, Anil, what Arya sir just confessed about, that triggered a question in my mind around student experience. A lot of, rather, I think most of the top universities in the country, feel that the students who are willing to be a student and applicant at their institution are in any case going to apply. So they are not really very bothered about offering a great user experience. We just talked about talked about 600 million internet users by the end of the next year in the country, and mobile users to be more than 50% out of that. But still, 70% of the top institutions, rather all the institutions in the country, would not really have a mobile responsive website. It becomes a challenge at times at many university websites for the students to discover content. What do you have to suggest to all those universities, and what are the marketing mix that you would like to spread some light on?
Okay, fine. Very great questions. I think I will divide these questions in three parts. The first one, as you mentioned, very categorically, is talking about the website. Specifically, it should be handheld devices compatible. Okay, we all know that the first thing what we do today, even our work is through phone. So it's also not depend upon institute to institute. Let me tell you, very honest. A lot of institute focus very slightly on the website. Their major focus, as I told you, is depending upon what digital marketing efforts. It would be 70% of their market spend is on Google, but that depend again, as I said, there is no very big formula for a marketing mix. It depends upon the institute's vision. Is their target audience, the kind of program and all. Probably I have a pan across strategy to acquire students. I have a tier 1 or tier 2 cities. The tier 1 strategy of handheld devices and all will work there. It may not work in the tier 2 and the rural areas. Please understand. You probably have to go till the level of print media. So I'll just give you a scenario and all. You go to Shillong and all. It's a very small, concise place. There probably you have to do more physical kind of a thing. I'm talking about a 1 decade or 2 decades back when we used to put a banner also in all admission standards and all. So it's still privileging some places. I'm not saying backward. It's privileged. So I feel definitely the website, again, I'm saying, is the first point of contact. It's from any customer there and all. It has to be taken into, an account, seeing the millennials who are engaging more on the handheld devices and all. It has to be a platform which should take care of that. Say for an example, like the complexity of sometimes the application form. I appreciate you have enabled your whole application format. Can today, within 10 to 15 minutes, can I fill an application form in a university through phone? It may be, I'm just saying, it may be argumentally say that student may not be interested just applying for the sake or just taking a chance. He will have to go and see probably in desktop and understand overall university website. But again, I'm saying, so these are the points somebody need to see when they're doing a marketing mix, when they're looking about number of applications before that lead, they have to make sure that what traffic is coming. But it's the biggest question. I probably a lot of time ask my digital team and all, can you tell me that, can my applicant fill in 10 minutes, my application from phone on, including making payment? I'm just talking from the marketing perspective. If you're able to get into that, great. I'm talking about the university who are looking the larger number. They're working on volume and mass admissions. That's like, okay.
I think very, very right. And, coming from the institutions of eminences who don't really run behind students and they get a lot of applicants, much more than the number of seats that they have on offer. It really means a lot. Professor Arya, I also personally believe that while, 4G and 5G has given us a lot of speed, but it has also taken away our patience. So when we shop online, this is something that I continue to experience, right? I go to Amazon, or even for that matter goes to Amazon app. If it is not really working, it is on the buffering mode. In 5 to 10 seconds, I start to lose my patience. I try to add some product into my cart. If it is 15 seconds still buffering, I decide not to buy that product. Just 15 seconds, right, gives me a lot of frustration. And from my decision to buy a product, I change it to buy a product, right? Does that apply to educational institutions is something that I would like to understand from you. And what is the cost of not offering a great user experience, even at the top institutions of the country?
So in terms of the user experience, I think we need to be very clear that higher education is not, or getting into higher education is not the same as buying a mobile phone or a laptop. It shouldn't be, right? Yeah. And if we have, and if we equate the purchase of higher education to the purchase of a commodity, then I don't think we should be called Institutes of Eminence at all, right? So the point I think I'm trying to make here is, again, higher education seems to occupy a different space where the traditional principles of marketing may actually fail, right? So in terms of user experience, yes, I agree that the admissions experience ought to be great, right? The student ought to feel engaged. The student ought to feel cared for. The student ought to be counseled enough to ensure that the student feels, at least, that they're making an informed decision. But it's not going to be the same as buying rice on Amazon Pantry, right?
Yeah.
So we do make it a point to tell our students that, look, we are one of many options that you have, right? This program is one of many options that you have, you know, in Jindal and across India and indeed across the world, right? But as long as you make an informed decision, we are satisfied. That's the you know, the entire reason why the admissions office should exist, to ensure that the student takes an informed decision. So in terms of speed, I can tell you this, our application form takes about, in its entirety, about half an hour to 45 minutes to fill, primarily because we've got 20, 30 odd questions, right? Which again, and we have those many questions because our admissions process is a lot more holistic, is very, very holistic, right? So the responses that our students give us in our application form will count towards whether or not they get selected, will count towards how much scholarship that they get. So it has to be, you know, a thoughtful process where the student has to you know, set aside some time, and we encourage our students to spend some time on our application form, which again is driven by NPF. So in terms of user experience, yes, I agree, it's important. But again, different universities have different approaches, and we just decided that you know, we can keep the user experience great, even if it is not, you know, immediate.
Yeah. So I think, you know, this question had two different opinions from the both of you. However, the common crux was, as far as, you know, Anil sir mentioned that content discovery and mobile responsive website and offering a great user experience so that, you know, student is not really stuck in an application form or any stage for that matter in the entire admissions process is extremely important. As far as your thoughts are concerned, you also say that, okay, content discovery and student experience to the extent that student is able to take an informed decision is extremely important. It's not like selling, and you don't really want to be appearing like that. Great, we'll pick up a question. So here we have Supriya Ghosh, who has asked that, my question is to understand how are institutes managing the walk-in and counseling during this pandemic time? I think counseling more or less both Professor Arya and Anil sir have answered. It's usually through webinars and you know, Zoom calls, less through any tangibility. But what about the walk-ins? Are you getting any walk-ins, or how did you you know, plan to cater to walk-ins even after, you know, the lockdown got unlocked?
Okay. See, the walk-ins, if you know, it's a very clear-cut directive, you know, from MHRD and all, you know, all the institution and all not supposed to be, you know, entertaining, you know, because it's a social distancing and it's isolation and all. So we being a residential institute, okay, and as a prerogative, it's been assigned, you know, the certain research kind of a work should be continuing and all. So we still have, you know, a large community, including professors. Like right now, I am also staying in the campus. There is still inside the campus and all, which there and all. So what we have maximum, like somebody parents is coming and all like that now after the lockdown is open, still we are maintaining the distance. So we have a very structured way organized, you know, a campus too. I'm talking about walking South Iran. So with the social distancing, there would be an usher, okay, predominantly who drive and forward. The parents and the walk-ins should be in their car. with, maintaining all the prereq requirement of, during the COVID situation, like mask, sanitize, their temperature has been taken off. So at least they can look around in all infrastructure, and predominantly the touch point like hostel rooms and all, but all from the distance and all they can see. So that's we allowed, but after the lockdown, which is opened and all. But yes, for coming future years, we have a very, very systematic way where we have number of dates announced. Okay, we also have pick and drop facilities for walk-ins. So for an example, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, certain times are being given. And what is the most important that we'll make sure that during that time we have a different department spots available, faculties, because more than the infrastructure and other bandwidth, they would like to interact with faculties also. So any given point of a time when the pandemic situation is not there, it's a very well structured, process for walk-ins to be handled. And I think all the university does that. There's a process where they come, they go through, see, and the exit level all across that.
Yeah. So Supriya, I think during this pandemic time, walk-in wasn't an option, but many of these universities somehow managed to get their virtual campus tours on the website and started floating that as an information. I think if you don't really have it for your institution yet, pandemic or no pandemic, I think it has given a lot of learning to remain prepared all the time and think out of the box and be innovative. I believe you must also get a virtual campus tour available all the time and put it on a website. Even if somebody wants to take a walk-in, do a walk-in and take a feel of the campus from a website, you should really enable that. Thank you for the question. There's another question that we have. That's from, okay, I'll take this one. That's from Mr. Abhijit Kumar. He asks, and he says, thanks for conducting this informative session. And he wants to know from the panelists that how are you interacting with the existing applicants? Which all channels have been fruitful, especially for engagement with existing lead pool, apart from webinars? We tried Google remarketing, but not sure if it worked. They're not our clients for sure. Otherwise, they would have known that whether it worked or did not.
Right. I'm happy to take a stab at that one. I think in the middle of all of this, I think we are forgetting that that in terms of marketing, in terms of reaching out to people, email remains the most effective form. Mm-hmm. Now, with a good sort of email aggregator or an email program, you can actually track the click-through rate, etc., etc. And we found a lot of traction just by emailing existing applicants. And of course, NPF has been fairly helpful with that as well. But having said that, if you're not finding too many results in terms of your Google and Facebook remarketing, figure out who the target audience actually is. And many a times, the setting up of the campaign, that's really absolutely critical. And if we haven't set up the campaign correctly, that can lead to disastrous results. We engaged with Google and Facebook remarketing many years ago. It was about 3 or 4 years back that we started. And we too went through a fairly steep learning process. And either universities will need to develop the skills in-house or must reach out to experts who are now quite prevalent in this market as well. So my recommendation is just keep trying, see what works. If not, ask NPF. Anil, any thoughts?
Thanks.
Yeah, I think very rightly said that, remarketing was an issue for people. And as you rightly mentioned, if your campaign is not set right with the target segment, it can go for, toss. Anytime, I think you can put in as much as amount, it goes. So I'll tell you very honestly, I think if it is not there, you should have a CRM platform. Okay, we had a long debate before we onboarded Suraj. You should know very well. The session's gone, till cows goes then home. The discussion was going on and on and on. But definitely we found out there's a merit about it. Please understand that when we talk about marketing and anything, you're dealing with certain data. Definitely there's an inquiry, it's a data. What stage, what the data points is telling you is basically the CRM really helps. The engagement is very, very different. For an example, a person who just started the application, I'm just sharing it, you all know that. He just written a basic information and all. You shouldn't be sending a very generic email. That's the reason where Prof. Arjya is saying email still works, but it's not just sending blindly, bombarding, it's like a, spray and pray kind of a methodology. Okay, you send it 10,000 emails, you think 10% of that would be opening up. So 5% would be responding, 2% conversion. It won't go. The theory is on arithmetic. Okay. The CRM really helped us. It's segment wise, each characteristic of a, I characterize, I give it that way in query. In each bucket, you have to treat them in differently. So you have 10,000 inquiry based, lead based. Each would be, different target audience. And when you target them with a different mailer set of information, a person who has just filled the application and just at the stage of paying your application and all, you don't need to tell all of them the whole story because he reached to that level. If the journey has gone to that, you don't need to repeat it. Probably you need to engage that if he doesn't pay, what he's going to miss. It could be the test of the exam. You won't be missing the test because the exams are very close to the date and all. You won't get the slots and all like that. That's what I'm saying. It's like you have to hit the iron when it's hot. This phrase goes. So I believe a better CRM plugged in with all the campaign, because it will monitor very well and all, can yield you far better results.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. It was I think pretty fairly detailed answer. And when Anil sir mentioned onboarded Suraj, she meant onboarded NoPaperForms. I take the privilege of front-ending the organization by being on grind, but there's a 300 member team just behind this wall. We keeps on working 24/7 and help us and all our clients really grow. So there's another interesting question by Ayush Agrawal. And Professor Arjya, I would like to take your inputs in this. And because this is a question in a lot of marketers' mind, right? They say that considering the limited budget an institution has, where should the majority of chunk of investment should go? Lead publishing sites like Shiksha, College Dunia, or on social media marketing like FB, Insta, Quora marketing? So this is a question. What's your take on it?
Okay, I'm going to be a little provocative with this answer, right? Mm-hmm. There is no way one can ignore the likes of higher education information aggregators. Yeah. If I were to type in, and again, let's look at the student's journey. The student will start with study XYZ in India. And the moment that happens, and they're doing it on Google. So Google is usually the first step to discovering institutions. And no matter what you type in, it's always going to be Shiksha, College Dunia, Careers 360, and the like. So, fortunately or unfortunately, your university has to be there. In what capacity is up to you. And that really is the question that Anil is asking. Abhijit? Ayush is asking, sorry. Right? Yeah. My recommendation is to try out different things. As I mentioned before, different universities have different selling points, right? And to find out where one gets the biggest, let's say, bang for the buck, really, right, is a matter of trial and error. And if we are looking for overnight results, it's not going to happen, right? And I think it's important for marketing specialists or admission specialists to make senior leadership understand that it's not like switching on a bulb. It's a long and arduous process of finding oneself, finding the university space in this online universe, right? So you have to be on Shiksha, you have to be on College Dunia, you have to be on Careers 360. Unfortunately, right now, there's no other way around it. Unless if you put in that much effort and money into search engine optimization, where if I put in study BCom in India, your university is ranked number 1 on Google, which is going to be very difficult. But instead of looking to spend money, I would suggest focus on the content. If you tell a good story, people will listen. So focus on, my recommendation is, if you have a limited budget, create better content with it. People will come. This I can guarantee. Right? Now, whether you put up that content on Facebook, Google, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, or whatever you have, that doesn't matter. If you have a good and compelling story, people will listen, people will react. For example, one of our students came up with this idea, and I don't know if SNU has done something similar. I'm sure you guys have. But so one of our students came up with this idea, 40 students, one quarantine, right? And we got 40 of our students to doing something to themselves or learning something while they are in quarantine, something new. So somebody's learning how to cook, somebody's going back to Kathak, somebody's playing the guitar, and a montage of 40 students who came together online in one quarantine, right? Now that's a great story, because what I'm telling the audience is that, look, our students are going through the same thing that you are. Mm-hmm. They're doing the same thing that you are. There's a sense of connect. Now, to my mind, that would be a compelling story to tell. So I think, putting in money into creating good content is far more important than, showing your videos 100 times. Let's just put it that way.